Okay everyone, so this is the task 12-10. There is one more task in your workbook called 12-9, which is not that important from the exam point of view. That's why I'm skipping that through. But if anybody wants, they can try it, but I'm not going to make a video for that. So 12-10 is more important from the examination point of view. Many students actually had this type of task in the examination, which is to prepare a overhead analysis sheet in the Excel. Okay, you remember overhead analysis sheet from management accounting, where you choose a cost which are overheads, fixed costs, and you apportion them into the various departments, and then you reapportion from the maintenance departments to the production centers, etc. So this session is about overhead analysis sheet, and very often students did get overhead analysis sheets in the examinations. So this task is more important from the exam point of view. So that is why we are doing this. So this activity should be completed after you have studied MMSE. You already completed that unit, we all know that. Ray Limited has the following 4 production departments. So this company has 4 production departments: machining 1, machining 2, assembly and packaging. Open overhead 1 from my Kaplan. So this is the Excel sheet which we need, overhead 1. So I already opened this file, overhead 1, where you will find the budgeted overheads for Ray Limited. So if you see in the data, they have given you various budgeted overheads. You have depreciation, you have rent and rates, you have indirect labor cost given to each and every individual department, and you have assembly cost, and then you have total overheads. You have different basis of apportionment also given to you. You have been given the carrying amount of the assets, you have been given the square meters occupied, and you also have been given the number of employees. And using all this information, we have to prepare an analysis sheet in the empty sheet here. They haven't even given you the format, so you have to prepare the format also by yourself. Create an overhead analysis sheet on the analysis worksheet. So they just want you to prepare a format for the overhead analysis sheet in this analysis sheet over here. Okay, so let's create a small table over here. We have 4 departments and then the total. I'm going to make it a little bit bigger so that you can all see that clearly. Okay, so first is the cost, then the next one, basis of apportionment. When you are doing your management accounting, these formats will all given to you, but in a synoptic the formats will not be given. You will have to remember the formats by yourself, and then you have to prepare them. Then we have basis of apportionment, and then the names of the 4 departments. They have 4 production departments, they said, which is machining 1, machining 2, assembly and packaging. So machining 1, machining 2, assembly and packaging, and then the total for all the calculations. So this is all the overhead analysis sheet what we need. What do they need next? So we created the overhead analysis sheet on the analysis worksheet. Using Excel, calculate the overhead for each department for depreciation and rent and rates. Think about how absolute, relative and mixed referencing could be applied. So they did not tell you which referencing to use clearly. So you can use any reference which you think is more suitable for that particular section. But don't just type the values, that will be incorrect. So you will have to use referencing. So use Excel, calculate the overhead for each department for depreciation and rent and rates. So the 2 costs which they want you to apportion first is depreciation and then rent and rates. Let's choose a suitable basis of apportionment first. So for rent and rates, for depreciation is done on the assets. So more suitable value of apportionment will be the carrying amount of the net current assets. So rather than typing something, you can just copy paste this one over here. We are not calculating, so we don't need referencing here. We can copy paste. So suitable basis of apportionment is carrying amount of the assets. For rent and rate, the suitable basis of apportionment will be the square meters occupied, which is your floor space. So copy paste square meters occupied. Now we have to calculate the depreciation for all the 4 departments based on the basis of apportionment, which is the carrying amount of the assets. So equal to depreciation is 80,000. Divide it with the total of the assets and then multiply it with the usage in the machining. You can use this formula differently. You can do 1280 divided by 3200 and multiply by 80,000. You will still end up with the same answer. So that is up to you how you want to use it. Total cost divided by the total area multiplied by the specific usage of the department. Now if you see in these formulas, total cost is remaining constant. It is only 80,000. It is not changing. So in the total cost C3, you can put absolute referencing because it is not changing. Then the total cost for carrying amount of the asset 3200 is also not changing. So K3 is also absolute referenced. But the department usage, which is G3, H3, I3 and J3, this you need to change as you copy paste the formula. So do not use any referencing for G3. C3 and K3 are remaining fixed. 80,000 and 3200 are not changing. Total cost and total cost of the assets is not changing. But the department usage is changing. So leave the department usage without any referencing, but use absolute referencing on the cost and absolute referencing on the total carrying amount of the assets. Once you completed the formula, press enter and it is telling you in the machining department the cost is 32,000. Copy paste it to the next sections and as you can see it has calculated everywhere. Now we want to check the total because data depreciation total is 80,000. If you did your apportionment correctly, the total here also should be 80,000. So check that and that total is also matching. So we know that our apportionment has been done correctly. Rent divided based on the square meters occupied. Same formula again, total rent is 120,000 divided by total square meters occupied, which is 2,500, and then multiply with the square meters occupied for machining department. Again total rent is not changing, so use absolute referencing on the total rent. Total floor space occupied is also not changing, so use absolute referencing on that. But the square meters occupied by each department is changing, so do not use any referencing on that. Press enter, it's calculated 30,000 for the first department and then copy paste into the next departments and then check your total. It should be 120,000. That is done. Now let's see what is the next task. So the first C point has been completed. Use copy and paste function to insert the indirect labor cost. Think about a quick way to paste rather than having to do each value in turn. So they want you to copy paste the next indirect cost because indirect costs are already allocated. They are machining 1, machining 2, assembly and packaging. They are already allocated, so you are not distributing them. They are already identified for each and every department. So how are we allocating the indirect labor cost? Is by direct allocation because they are already directly allocated. And now the indirect labor cost for machining department is this much, then for machining 2 and assembly and packaging. What they are asking you is think about a quick way to paste rather than having to do each value in turn. So rather than copying pasting one by one, they want you to use a quick way. So quick way is to use the transpose function. Remember, we learned it about that in the beginning when we started spreadsheet. Transpose converts the values from rows to columns and columns to rows. Here the information is in a column and now we are converting it into a row. So come here, right click, paste special and use transpose and say OK. And you can see all of them have been copied pasted. Sometimes when you copy paste, the borders are getting erased. Just redo the borders. That's not a big thing. Afterwards, check your total again to see if it is correct or not. So total is 97,900. And here also you can see the total indirect labor cost is 97,900. Next one. Create a Vlookup to assign the assembly cost to the assembly department. So now we have the assembly cost 15,600 and they are telling you this one only goes to the assembly department, okay, not to any other department. So assembly cost is only to the assembly department and they want you to create a Vlookup table to do that. Okay, let's give that a try. So the next cost what we are doing is assembly cost. This one is also direct allocation because they already given you the figure, but they want you to use a Vlookup here. So equal to formulas, lookup and reference, Vlookup. Lookup value is assembly cost. What we want to pick up is assembly cost. Table array is in the data sheet. Highlight your information. We only need up to the assembly cost. And this data is not changing. So but you are not copy pasting this formula anywhere, so we don't need absolute referencing. Column index number. See in which column, sorry, 1 minute, let me go back again. Equal to Vlookup. Lookup value is assembly cost. Table array is given to you. Because you are not using this formula anywhere else, they only ask you Vlookup one place. I am not using any absolute referencing. But if you are going to use this formula again and again, this data is remaining constant, so you can put absolute referencing on both A3 and C11. Now we want to enter the column index number. The value what they want to pick up is the assembly cost, which is 15,600, which is in column C. But as we know, we cannot put alphabet, we need to put a number. So column C is, column A will be 1, column B will be 2 and column C will be 3. So put 3. And range lookup over here will be false because we are looking an exact match of the description of assembly cost. If we put range lookup as true, anywhere it uses the word cost, it will pick up that because it is the nearest description. So here we want to look for an exact match where it says assembly cost, that only we want to pick up. So that's why use range lookup as false and say OK, and you can see the assembly cost has been copied here. And there is no other assembly cost in the other departments, so because of that you can enter zeros. In Excel you can enter zeros irrespective of what the question is. But when I enter 0, it is showing me a hyphen because maybe the formatting of the data is not in the number. So change the formatting to number and it will be able to show you the zeros. So right click, format cells, number and no decimal places. And you can do the same for this one and this one also together. Right click, format cells and number. And the total is 15,600. Next thing, use formulas or functions to complete the overhead analysis sheet. Round to the nearest pound. We did not get any decimal places, but they want you to round it to the nearest pound. So just highlight them, format cells, number, and remove the decimal places. So that will all round up to the nearest pound. Okay, that's done. And maybe 1000 separator. Okay, so all the figures are now calculated. Some figures are left aligned, some figures are right aligned. Just doesn't look very good. So just change the alignment once. Put right aligned or left aligned, that's up to you. But make sure all the figures are pointing out into one direction. Continuing. Format the cells to Arial size 12, bold headings, 1000 separator and 0 decimal places. We already done the 0 decimal places. Bold headings we need to do. 1000 separators we have already done. And Arial size 12. So select all your data. Arial size 12. It's already in Arial size 12, so we don't need to change anything. They did not ask you to do this, but just do a sum for all the cells, because whenever you complete overhead analysis sheets, you always do the totals. After totals, you do divide the service department overheads to the production departments, but in here the business said all 4 of them are production departments, so because of that we don't need to use any next step of reapportionment. And that is your task 12-10, which is now completed. Thank you.